Hello crafty friends, I'm Lien from Studio Kato and I'm back with another video about clean and simple card design. I'm making a set of 2 Christmas cards today. They look very similar and I'm going to give you 5 tips for designing clean and simple cards. I am using the pet or the special pet delivery die set from Spellbinders, which comes with 2 sentiment dies, 2 pets to assemble, and a frame die. I'm going to color all of these pieces with my Ohuhu markers. I cut them out of white cardstock. Actually, I cut each pet twice. That will come in play later. But I'm coloring them all in with my Ohuhu markers. If you're having trouble coloring in your dies like this, if you have a lot of pieces to assemble, I highly recommend you assemble one pet first or one piece first, so you know which piece goes where and you know where to add your shading and things like that. That's going to make it a lot easier to color in your pieces correctly. Now, there are a couple of different things that have already come in play here that are going to come back later in my card design, but which I already thought of when I was coloring these pieces. The first one was cutting out 2 pieces for each pet, or 2 sets of pieces for each pet. So I am going to stack up the dimension for my pets, and that is going to set them apart a little bit more. It's going to be a small element, but because I am adding dimension to it, it's going to be more of a focal point. The second piece that I already thought of was my color. I am going to only be using 2 colors on each card, and I want those colors to be contrasting. So for the dog, I went for a brown color, and for the cat, I went for a blue-gray tone, and I have kept that in mind while die cutting the pattern paper that I'm going to put behind this frame. So the tips of adding dimension and limiting your color palette are definitely going to come back later, but keep those in mind because those are 2 very important tips. Now, I think the most important tip is very obvious, but sometimes it goes a little bit forgotten, and that is that you really only have one element to your clean and simple card. Usually it's really just one. So you want to put a little bit of extra effort into that, and for me that means adding some dimension or adding a touch of gold, something like that, to really set it apart on your card. It doesn't have anything to compete with on a clean and simple card, but still you want to really grab the attention of the viewer of that card or the recipient of that card and you really only have one element to grab the attention of the recipient. So just make sure this is an element you're very happy with. For me, again, that means adding some extra dimension to pieces or adding very dramatic shading in your coloring. And I'm also making sure that the frame I have die cut, I die cut that 3 times for each card. So I die cut it twice out of white and once out of gold and stack those up together. It's going to come back to that dimension as well, but just really make sure you're happy with your one element on your card. I took a lot of time with this. I think I spent half an hour coloring both of these pets, mostly also because I didn't like my first coloring of the dog, so I had to redo that. But yeah, just put a little bit of extra effort into it. Take your time, make sure you're happy with it before you put it on your card. And the coloring as well. So here you can already see that I have a orange background for that blue-gray cat. Blue and orange are great complementary colors or contrasting colors. So they work great together and they are going to have a high impact because they are contrasting colors. Now, it did take me a while to just assemble these pieces because I wanted the paws just so they barely hung over that frame to give it a little bit more life and movement. You absolutely don't have to assemble these pets the way I am assembling them. You can actually cut the paws apart or something. They're connected on the back, so they're easier to assemble, but you can cut them apart and make it wave probably. Just be creative with it. And my fourth tip, I am going to use the Christmas Foliage Strip and Borders die set from Spellbinders for this, but you can actually do this a million different ways. And my fourth tip is to break apart your white space or break up your white space. I have die cut a border die from a piece of cardstock. This was an A2 size piece of cardstock, but I'm keeping it white. My card base is also going to be white, so my background is going to be one color, white. You don't have to use white cardstock. You can do this on any color cardstock you want. Just stick to one color for your background. And that is going to look very empty. To make it look a little bit less empty, but without taking away any of that beautiful white space, cut it apart and prop one part of it up. For me, for this card, that means I use a border die and I have that frilly little detail. It's a really nice detail, but I'm going to put it on white cardstock. I am going to prop it up on some foam tape to set it apart a little bit more, but it's still all going to be white. So it's a very subtle detail in the end, but it adds a lot to it. It's going to ground my element. It is grounding my sentiment, which I curved around the border die as well. So just this border die is doing a lot for this card. Now again, you don't need a border die to break up your white space. If you're like me, you probably like to matte your cardstock. Not like Gina K Designs does. She always adds a black matte. That's a bit of a harsh frame for me, but matting is a really useful frame. So if you just cut a smaller rectangle, just do it 4 inches by 5¼ inch. Just make sure your margins are the same all the way around your card. If you just cut it a little bit smaller and prop that rectangle up on some foam tape, keep everything the same color, you are going to break up your white space because you are going to essentially create a frame with your dimension. It's a really easy thing to do. It doesn't require any specialty products, and it does add a lot to a clean and simple card design. Now, all that's left to do is add my embellishments, and we're coming back to that first tip of making sure your colors are not too wild. So I'm taking the same colors as I have in my background for my embellishments, but the fifth tip is also to simply keep everything contained and together. There is a lot of white space on this card. It is there by design. You don't want to add embellishments in that white space. You want to add embellishments to the pieces that you want to highlight. So I add them around my focal element, the frame with the pet in it, or you can add some around your sentiment as well if you want them. Just don't add too many. Keep the colors the same as you've used before. Repeat one of your colors in your embellishments, or keep them gold. That would have been perfect for this card as well. But just keep them contained. Don't go off into that white space to add more to your card. Just add them to the pieces you already have. So 5 tips to make clean and simple cards. Put some extra effort into your focal image. You can add that with extra shading or extra dimension. Extra dimension is the second tip. You are going to set your element apart a lot more if it's propped up. The same goes for breaking up white space. Use some dimension to do that. Don't add a ton of colors. Just repeat the colors you have used before and use contrasting colors. Be very aware of the colors you're using so they have a much higher impact. And fifthly, I didn't do these in order, I just realized, but keep your elements contained. You can just add your elements all together. These are all on that same border die. The border die is connecting all of the elements. The embellishments are highlighting my focal element and not going off and disrupting that white space. I hope these are some useful tips for your clean and simple card designs. I really liked putting these together. They're the same design, so it's always easy to make duplicates. And for Christmas cards, you always want a couple more cards probably. So this is by no means a design you can mass produce. You probably can, but I spent, I think, 1.5 hours on both of these cards. So you probably don't want to use this design for mass production, but it's just a really fun way to add a little extra to your Christmas card stash. I hope you enjoyed the tips. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out my Instagram for the Advent giveaways. I hope to see you there, and subscribe here so I can see you here next time as well. Thank you so much for watching.